Howdy, and welcome to our second lesson in the story of hope. We'll be in lesson 2 today, but I have a special surprise I shared with you last time. As we teach the story of hope not only to adults but to children, the story of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, the thing we like to do with children, and it's good for adults too, that we tell the story. We tell the story. So, and this is not just a made-up story. This is based upon "Thus saith the Lord." The whole Bible is actually based upon the first 11 chapters in Genesis. So we are at the rock bottom foundation of the story of the Bible, and we want you to have a solid foundation for your faith, and also that you'll be sharing your testimony and your faith with others, starting in Genesis 1:1. So our lesson 2 today, if you have the guidebook, it says the Bible continues. Now first we studied, if you remember, about God and the character of God and what he was like, and we learned one thing about God, that he always was, he always existed, he had no beginning, he had no end. Psalm 90 verse 2. Today it says, the Bible continues by saying that God created the universe, including our earth and its heavens, as well as its living organisms, plants, animals, and of all kinds. So right now, I'm going to stop and tell you a story of the first week of creation. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was lifeless and empty and dark. And the Spirit of God moved across the vast emptiness. And God said, "Let there be light." And the light shone around the sphere of the whole earth. And God saw that it was good. God took the light and he separated the light from the darkness. To the light he called it day. To the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. On the second day, God looked at the waters that covered the earth, and he said, "Be divided." And the waters came up high, and some stayed down on the earth. And God looked at the waters above and the waters below, and he looked at the space in between. And he said, "I will call you sky." And he saw that it was good. On the third day, God looked at the waters that covered the earth, and he said, "Let dry land appear." And the dry land came up out of the waters, and the waters ran off into one place they called seas, and there was rivers and valleys and mountains and lakes all over the earth. And God saw that it was good. And God looked at the dry land, and he said, "Let vegetation appear," and grasses and herbs and flowers started springing up all over the earth, and trees, and just covering the earth, and fruit trees and vegetable trees and plants and little plants and microscopic plants and insects just all over the earth. And in everything that God had made, he put seed so life could go on. On day 4, God said, "Let there be lights, a greater light to rule the day and a darker light to rule the night." He made these lights so that they would separate the time and the seasons and the days and the years. To the greater light, it came across the eastern sky in the morning, bringing warmth
and health to everything that God had made and created, and strength. And at nighttime, the moon would reflect the sun, and the stars and the galaxies would come out, and the whole sky was full of God's beauty and handicraft. It was so awesome to see the array that God had made. On the fifth day, God looked at the seas and the oceans, and he looked at the dry land and the skies, and he said, "Let living sea creatures appear." And the ocean became filled with fish, and some large, some very large fish, and some very, very small. They all had different swimming patterns and habits, and they stayed together in groups. And God looked at the sky, and he said, "Let the fowls appear in the air." And many, many birds started flying all over the sky, and they filled the sky. Big birds, some large birds, and some small birds, and they all flew differently. Some of them would fly high, way up in the sky, and some would fly very low and close to the ground. And the whole earth was covered in all of these creatures, and God made them with seed within themselves so life could continue on. And on the sixth day, God looked at the dry land, and he said, "Let land creatures appear." And all over the earth it was covered with large and small animals that roamed the earth and ate the grasses that God had provided for them. Some were very, very large, and some were very small. Some were very wild, and some were quite tame. And God looked at all these animals that he had made, and he saw that it was good. And God said, "Let's make people in our image." And God made the first man and the first woman. God breathed into his nostrils, and he became a living soul. And God created Adam and Eve. He told them to populate the earth. He gave within man seed that he also would continue on. And everything that God had made, he said, "It's very good. This is very good." On the seventh day, God rested. It was a special day, and he had looked at all that he had done, and God knew that this was a day for man and God to sit apart to rest. And this story comes from the first and second chapters of the first book in the Bible, the book of Genesis. And this is the story of the first week of time.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to read now the actual words God gave to Moses about the creation of the world in Genesis chapter 1. We will start again where we started last week. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So if you have your book, your study book, then we're going to look at the 6 days of creation and what happened each day. So in our book it says, what is on the first day of creation, according to the Bible, what was the initial state of creation in verse 2? What was the earth like? Well, what does the Bible say? The Bible says it was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So I hope you've already answered these questions. I hope by now you've learned to study ahead, as most of my students do, and I encourage you, because while I'm videoing it, I have to give you the answer immediately. So hopefully you've already taken the time to try to answer the questions. If you need to correct them, if they're not right, you need to correct them. It's okay. So the Bible says, and what did God do in verse 3 through 5? And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and he called the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. So what did he do? He created light. He separated the light from the darkness, and the darkness he called day, and the light he called day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Some people want to question, was this a real day? Was this a 24-hour day? Well, why not? Every time day is used in the Bible, usually it's referring to, especially if it has a number beside it, if it was so many days, 13 days, 10 days, 50 days, 77 days, it's referring to a 24-hour day. Some people want to question it right here in Genesis. Why would it not refer to a day? God could have made it in a minute if he wanted to. But we believe that the Bible is teaching about a literal 24-hour day, especially when he says the evening and the morning were the first day. It's pretty obvious that he's referring to a 24-hour day. Okay? And then under B, the second day of creation, verse 6 through 8, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Another word for firmament, we don't use that word much. We don't say a firmament. We usually talk about sky, where the birds fly, where the planes fly. In the Bible refers to heaven in three different senses. There's three different heavens recorded in the Bible when it says heaven, and we need to know which heaven it's talking about. The first heaven is where the sky is when God separated it, and on the second day when he separated the waters from the waters, and he made the firmament, which is the sky. So that's the place where the airplanes fly, where the birds fly, and where the clouds are. Now the second heaven would be where spaceships fly up in outer space, where the galaxies and the stars are. And then the third heaven would be where God resides, where God lives. So if you think of it that way, when you read your Bible, it'll help you to understand it. So on the second day, he created sky. That's the best term that we could use. He created the sky. Then on the third day, verse 9 through 13, and God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place. You notice today, there's only one ocean. Now there's plenty of names for the different oceans, but they're all connected. You put a boat in an ocean, you're going to go all the way around the world. So it says, and God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And God called the dry land earth, the gathering together of the waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, and the herb yielding seed, and fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and the herb yielding seed after his kind, the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. Okay, so now we have what was created on the third day. What happened on the third day in 9 through 10? God separated the waters and made the dry land appear, that made the land come up out. I didn't separate the waters, made the land come up out of the waters, and he created dry land, and then we would call vegetation or plant life. When he, in verse 9 through 13, verse 12 and 13, and the earth was brought forth grass. It starts in 11. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed after his kind. Now notice every living thing that God created, he put seed within it so it would continue on for perpetual generations. Okay? Then what happened next on that same day was that he created, that's the answer in our book. The first thing he created was dry land, and then the second thing was vegetation. He created vegetation or plant life. Then on day 4, verses 14 through 19, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, for seasons, for days, and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the 3rd day. So, on the 4th day of creation, what were some of God's earth-related purposes for the lights in the earth's heavens? He made a greater light, we refer to it as the sun, and then a lesser light, we refer to it as the moon. You remember what it said in verse 14? It says he made them for signs, for seasons, for days, and for years. Signs, seasons, and this is how planters plant. If you're a farmer, you probably use an almanac, and you know, because of the position of the moon and when it shows everything, you plant or you reap. During that, they've done that for ages upon this earth, so that's why God give us this light. Now, most people have a question is, wow, I thought God created light on the first day. But the problem is that it's not the sun and the moon. He is the light, and he can do whatever he wants, but that's the light probably it was referring to on day 1. But he gave us the sun and the moon, the stars, to give us light for signs, season, days, and years. One question that might pop up is, where did we get the term, where did we get weeks from? We always live by weeks. We have so many weeks, 52 weeks in a year. Where did we get that from? We actually got it from the Bible. No matter what religion or background, everybody's calendar is based upon weeks. And it came from the Bible, actually, this story, or this creation story in the Bible about the first week of time, as I mentioned when I told my story a moment ago. Okay? So in day 5, verses 20 through 23, and God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and the fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the 5th day. So on the 5th day, that's our question, what were some of the God-related, what animals were created on this day? The fish of the sea, all of the great fishes in the sea, to the small ones, all the fish, and then all of the fowls of the air, all of the birds, big birds, small birds, he created all of them on the 5th day. And then on day 6, verses 24 and 25, and God said, let the earth bring forth living creature after his kind. And remember, he tells them to populate the earth. Every living thing that God created, he gave them seed. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind, and it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and God saw that it was good. So God, on the 6th day, or part 1, I guess we could say, of the 6th day, he created land animals. whatever. Yes, it's probably dinosaurs. It certainly was dinosaurs and all kind of animals that God created upon the earth. And he gave them seed to perpetuate and to continue on, so life would continue on. And then on the second part of the sixth day, we're actually going to get into that next week, when God created, and I mentioned it when I told the story, but it's not part of our lesson today. It's a lesson in itself that we'll have in lesson 3, that God created human beings or people. So we'll get into that lesson next week. Okay? Now, one of the ways I found out how that you can remember the 6 days of creation, just like I was telling in my story, and as a matter of fact, I'll read the last and then we'll look at it next week, is in chapter or verse 26 and 27, and we'll get into this next week and next time. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion," or another word could be sovereignty or rulership, "over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And that's an awesome story about the first week of time. It's right there in our Bible, but you would be surprised how much. Even when I was telling the story, you may have thought, is that in the Bible? Is that in the Bible? Is that, or did he misquote the Bible? Everything I told in my story was true, and everything that's told in Genesis 1 is true. Now, what may be confusing for some as we get into chapter 2 in our next lesson, we're going to find out that God goes back, even after in chapter 1 where he said he created man after his kind. Then we're going to go into more detail. Chapter 2 goes into detail how, and that's why we have the next lesson, lesson 3. Lesson 3 would be the creation of mankind. That's our next lesson for next time. Okay? So one of the ways that I learned how to remember the day, to tell the story, I learned this from what's his name? John, can't get his name right now. John, you remember his name? John, anyway, he's a Bible storyteller. What starts with a W? Anyway, he taught us about storytelling. He's written John Walsh. And he taught us about storytelling and to divide it into sections. Of course, most stories are divided into 3 or 4 scenes or sections. The story of creation is divided into 6 because God created everything in 6 days. Then on the 7th he rested, as we're told in Genesis chapter 2, verse 1. So what I did was made myself a division in 3 parts, and then to remember the parts of the story. The first 3 days, the first day he created light and darkness, the second the sky, the third the earth and plant life. Well, then when you go down to 4, it fills in all of this. This is filled in, 1, 2, and 3 is filled in by 4, 5, and 6. So day 1 he created light, day 4 he created the sun, the moon, the stars. Day 2 he created the heavens. In day 5 he filled the heavens with the birds. And then of course they were seas, and he filled the seas with fish. Then on the 6th day, which represents the first day, he created on the dry land animals and human beings. So it's pretty awesome. It's easy to remember that way when you try to remember the 6 days of creation. It's just one way that I remembered. It was easy for me, and sometimes it's very hard for me to remember how, which day did God create this, which day did God create that. So it's easy to remember that way. Now this is a Bible story and the true event that actually happened right in the first chapter of the Bible. But it's not just for children. Please don't ever get that idea. Hand me that other story of hope. This one's written on the front. The story of hope is for adults, and we have adventures in the story of hope. We have an adventures book here, or maybe it's in, do you have one in the office there? Oh, never mind, don't go out. So we have adventures in the story of hope for children. That's where we do the storytelling. We tell about in the Bible, and we give them a lot of games that they can play. So the story of hope, this is for adults, and you want to share it with your friends. You can even tell it to your children. I heard one of my students who are taking this course said they were so excited to tell it to their grandchildren. It's a great idea to tell it to your children and grandchildren, even if you don't have a copy of the Story of Hope. But I'm excited to tell you that you can download the Leader's Guide free. If you don't, you said, I don't have a Story of Hope with me, I didn't get one yet. You want to order one probably for students if you're teaching somebody else, but you can download the free, did you hear me? Free Leader's Guide. Just go to goodsoil.com. I'll give you the link right here somewhere, goodsoil.com, and you go to the link of the Leader's Guide. You can download it free. I think you'll probably have to fill out a thing where they can send you some emails or something, but you'll have to register, and then you can download it free. There's no cost to it. You don't have to buy the Story of Hope, but you can download this free. It's got the same thing that the Story of Hope's got in it, but it's got guide notes in it. It's got the notes and the supplements in it, so you'll have that with you if you want to teach it in your Sunday school class, to one-on-one. I teach it 7 times a week, one-on-one. Got 7 different people, and actually more than that I teach to via online, okay? So thank you for joining me today. That's our end of lesson 2. So look forward to you next time with lesson 3, which is the creation of human beings, or we would call mankind, the creation of mankind. Yeah, lesson 3. Looking forward to seeing you then. God bless you, and thanks for joining us.